So now we have come to the last item of today's agenda. It is a forum on driving digital transformation, e-learning in medical education. For this session, we will have Dr. Vaikuntham Rajaratnam, Associate Professor Technologies Dr. Muhammad Helmi Norman, and Mr. Tan Hao Ming as our guest speakers, and Professor Datuk Sivalingam as the moderator. Now, I am pleased to invite Professor Datuk Sivalingam to begin the session.
Thank you very much, Nurul, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This afternoon, we have about less than an hour, really, so I hope our speakers will speak for about 10 to 15 minutes and give some time for discussion. We have 3 speakers, as was mentioned, and their CVs clearly are going to be quite long. So I'll just briefly introduce all 3, and then we can move on to our discussion. Our first speaker will be Dr. Vaikuntham Rajaratnam. He's an extremely passionate and internationally accredited hand surgeon in Singapore, and he's also a medical educator. He's got sufficiently great amount of experience and instructional design, and he's been teaching for more than 4 decades, both in clinical practice, faculty development, and a range of other health professions education. So clearly he is well placed to discuss with us today's topic on digital transformation. But apart from that, he's also a very active researcher, and I'm sure he's got much to share. And he's also motivated me to complete my master's program in this session. So thank you very much, Vaikuntham, for joining us. The second speaker is Associate Professor Muhammad Helmi Norman from University Kebangsaan. He's the Deputy Director of Instructional Technologies for the Center for Teaching and Curriculum Development in UKM. He's also a well-placed medical educator, and he's also an Apple Distinguished Educator and Apple Professional Learning Specialist. And the third speaker is Mr. Tan Hao Ming, who wants to be referred to as Chris, who has a passion for technology, sustainability, innovation, and he is also represented at the United Nations UNFCCC conference in various aspects, apart from engaging in English communications. So he's the youngest of the group, and I'm sure he's got different perspectives in trying to attempt to cover our very difficult topic. And I'm sure as we go into digital transformation in education, as has been going on for the last 2 days, there will always be resistors who feel that face-to-face education is by far the most well-tested method. But we know that connectivity and the internet has changed, and hybrid learning has become commonplace. So let's invite the first speaker, Dr. Vaikuntham, to share his thoughts before we listen to the other 2 speakers. Dr. Vaikuntham, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Just wave your hand if you can hear me. Great, excellent. First of all, I'd like to thank the university, IMU, for inviting me to say my few words. Prof. Siva and myself go back a long time, even before our days of entering into e-learning. I don't particularly like the word e-learning, and I'll just share with you few of my thoughts. Just a disclaimer, my thoughts are mine alone, in my opinion, not that of the institutions I'm affiliated with, because some of them are quite radical. And secondly is that my thoughts change every day. So what I believe today, tomorrow I may not believe. That is depending on evidence and the change in technology. Technology changes a lot, quite tremendously. And recently I was looking at some of the stuff. I've decided to stop using some of the technology because it's not as useful. So I prefer the word mobile learning. So mobile learning, because our learners are very mobile, very unique. Health professional education is quite different from the rest of the higher education, partly because we are vocational based to a significant extent, especially with the introduction of clinical medicine early in the undergraduate days. So mobile learning is, my definition, is the ability to learn, to acquire knowledge and skills. While they are mobile, that means the mobility of the learner, which is taken literally, plus also the use of smart devices. I don't like the word mobile, I rather use the word smart devices. So that's the kind of definition that I go. And I tell you why we should be involved. There are 6.4 billion devices, smart devices in the world. 80% of the population of the world have smart devices. 60% access the internet. The average time spent on devices, these smart devices, you want to guess? The average time is just 3 minutes short of 7 hours. 7 hours. That is the equivalent to getting a master's degree in a year. So with that background, that's how the learner is. I mean, that's the opportunity there. Whether they learn or not is different. So I think once we look have looked at that kind of like a definition and why we should go towards mobile learning, is let's go back to cognitive neuroscience basis of learning. So if you go back to the information processing theory of how learning occurs through our senses, through our 5 senses, that's how we learn. So therefore, learning has to be multi-sensory. So multi-sensory learning means that you have to use all of the senses. So commonly is audio and visual, but let's not forget haptic feedback. There are a lot of learning that can occur with reinforcement using the haptic feedback of smart devices. So we capture, so the mobile learning is the process, the whole complete comprehensive processes that are involved in capturing information through the multi-senses and then curating, editing, and using it through sharing of via multimedia content. So that's what it is crucial to understand about why mobile learning is actually here to stay and you can't run away from it. The other component you must also understand is the multiple platforms that we have for distribution and engagement and monetization. Why monetization is important? Because when Prof. Siva retires, he's going to create a lot of content and he's going to make money from it. Yes, so it's an opportunity as a form of earning some form of money through the creation of content. Najib said cash is king, but content is emperor. So content is very important. And the other good thing that has happened when I started off in technology as compared to now is that the technology is so advanced, both for the creation of content and the consumption of content, is that all our devices now and the platforms are device agnostic. So you don't have to create something for Apple, you don't have to create something for Samsung, they're all device, and partly is because of the HTML5 background. So that's why we have to get involved. So why mobile learning? Because if you go back and look at our learners, our young learners today, not even our young, even our old learners, I include myself as a young learner, they are very easily distracted. I believe I sometimes have attention deficit disorder and I'm very impatient. It's growing age. And even the young learners are very impatient. And they prefer social learning. They like to learn together. They sit in Starbucks and they learn. They're very independent. But one of the important things, they're hungry for knowledge. And if you can't give them the knowledge, they'll find it elsewhere. And they're very mobile. And especially with since the pandemic, with Zoom learning, so they can learn anywhere. So mobile learning provides this opportunity to give accessibility to information and knowledge. It's flexible. So what I call, I mean, everybody familiar with mobile is anytime, anywhere, anyhow. Anytime, anywhere, anyhow learning. And it's personalized. I can personalize. I've got AI on some of my platforms where I can personalize the learning that the individual needs based on his assessment done prior, knowing that he's weak in anatomy. I can send him some anatomy stuff. And it allows for engagement and interactivity. Now, I don't like students to call me directly and speak to me. I have my own time at 5 in the morning to answer my email. So it allows for both synchronous and asynchronous interaction. So that's good. And the other important thing is students want to learn just when they need the knowledge, the just-in-time learning, and mobile learning allows for that. And it is proven beyond the doubt in the body of knowledge in the literature that it is effective and efficient. So with that, so what do we need to create? So as subject matter experts, as faculty members, we need to therefore use this platform, this new, well, not really new, it's quite old framework to create our educational material, both from educational programs and the resources that we need for these programs. So we need to create multimedia resources. And we can't wait for the multimedia technician to come along. I think every healthcare professional, faculty member should learn basis of multimedia creation. Prof. Siva will run a workshop for you how to do that. But the other thing is understand the concept of micro-learning. So we just published our work on my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel for hand surgery education, plus also a bit on medical education. There's got 1.8 million views. And when you analyze our videos, I mean, I'm constantly changing them. The average time spent on a video is 1.5 seconds, 1.57 minutes. So it is limited. So your videos have to be maximum 3 minutes. So you do micro chunking or micro learning or nano learning is the concept behind it. And you must also look at their needs and their habits. What is it that they want to learn? Maybe they're not that interested in the pathophysiology, just want to know the clinical science. So provide that and give the pathophysiology in another media that they can do when they want to. And engaging them is important. And now we have software to interrupt the video with an assessment, micro assessment, like a quiz to make sure they understand before they proceed. So that's quite useful. And the other thing that is important that we have found, especially in postgraduate education, is assessment becomes painful both for students and for teachers. And so hassle-free assessment with feedback must be provided through the use of mobile learning. It's quite easy. So what I do is get my residents, especially to record their procedure digitally and then send it to me through a portfolio platform. And then I can critique at my own time. And then when we meet face-to-face, we can then discuss further. So this is hassle-free assessment and feedback. And the other thing it provides is because it sits on a platform, it gives you the data, big data analysis to improve learning, to improve teaching, and as a form of teaching for the learners. So what can be taught on these platforms? I think everything that we teach, all the various rubrics that we have for teaching and assessment in medical education can be done. Even motor skills, as part of my PhD thesis was I worked on the philosophy, how could we create content to teach micro suturing based on online learning and to provide resources and assessment online. So it is possible. With the interaction and the level of technology that we have today, we can even teach higher order thinking through the use of branching scenarios and clinical case discussions. And let's not forget the soft skills. Communication and professional skills are also easily taught through the use of mobile learning with snippets of videos on professionalism, which can be used to teach this. Lastly, I'd like to conclude with the myths. What are the myths? Now, a lot of us think, oh, I just got a PowerPoint, I can just make it into mobile learning. That's not mobile learning. That's what I call the PowerPoint cemetery or graveyard. It's dumping rubbish. So they has to be created from scratch, and it is dynamic. You just can't create one and leave it. So I'm currently spending a lot of my time redoing some of my videos because some of them weren't very high quality, and I'm just trying to recreate that. And a lot of people say, oh, very dangerous, mobile learning is not secure. It is very secure. I can do my bank transaction. I don't that I've got much money securely on the mobile platform. I see no reason why you can't. And if you say it's too expensive, remember 80% of the population of the world has got mobile learning. I go to a lot of low-income countries, and wherever I go, even the patients, they come in on a broken down bicycle, but they usually have a smart device with them. So it is not expensive. I will stop my presentation there and look for comments or any interaction. Thank you.
Yes, I think I have to agree that a lot of the people have mobile devices, and this is the way that we can connect to people. So last time I had a project with the ASEAN where we set up we tried to look into ways to tackle things like climate change, and that is one of the ways to reach these people in Cambodia is through mobile devices. So back in about 2017, I think 60 or 70% of them has already gotten a smart device. So it's not a very good one, but it's one that is good enough that we can connect to them, where I do agree with you on the personalized learning part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll keep the questions to the end of the session so that we can actually cross-talk and listen to the different views. I was muted, sorry, just now. Maybe we will move on to Professor Mohammed Helmi Norman and listen to his views on this digital transformation, because coming from the public university, certainly there have been huge trends in the movement. So perhaps we'll listen to him, and then we'll listen to Chris, and then we have a discussion at the end of the session in this forum. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Prof. Dato Sivalingam. And as a moderator today, distinguished panelists, Dr. Valikunthan, Vaikunthan, and Mr. Chris, okay, and also the everybody here today. So yeah, thank you for the introduction, and just to highlight to everybody, I'm not a medical specialist, so but I come from the education faculty, and I'm with University Kebangsaan Malaysia. So I'm involved with a couple of medical projects, but you know, going to what Dr. Valikunthan was saying about mobile learning and consumption versus creation. I think lovely what he said about you know. I think it's now we're in a part where we're moving towards creation of learning content, because if we, you know, it's about empowering students, it's about empowering educators. How do we create new content? And of course, I also agree with the notion that you just can't, you know, do a PowerPoint slide and expect engagement to happen. It just doesn't work. So I think there's a learning design, a teaching design there, and learning is now more global. I think with you know, massive open online courses, with mobile learning or mobile learning. I think, of course, yeah, definitely learning is going more global in that sense. So I think in University Kebangsaan Malaysia or National University of Malaysia or UKM, we have the framework of it's called active learning, and comprises of three elements, which is pedagogy or pedagogy and learning, and also the space, and also the technology. So with pedagogy, you know, in face-to-face environments, it's really different. You can't just take what you're doing in teaching and learning in face-to-face settings to remote settings. I mean, this is how it works. I mean, I think there's also a process where there's digital pedagogy, or you can call it digital learning design, or the first speaker was saying about you know, mobile learning, and also all these types of digital and online learning. And also we move to the we move to the space part, which is space, which is comprising of the physical and learning space, which is the physical and digital learning space, and then also the technology, and moving towards the I think the pressing issue of now we're in the pandemic, of course, and then moving towards I don't know the right term, endemic, or you know, the towards the end of the pandemic, and then and the issue of the fourth industrial revolution. I think we live in a world where the fourth industrial revolution, the WF also always saying that the fourth industrial revolution is you live in, there's three worlds, okay, the physical, the digital, and the biological. And technology investments is happening in these three worlds. In the physical part, we have, these drones, we have the autonomous cars. I think in medical education, there's a lot happening with these digital and the goggles and everything, and moving towards the digital space, which is virtual reality. We have the augmented reality. I saw the virtual, in the demo of IMU just now, the montage, very interesting stuff. And then how to cross with the biological aspects. We have Apple Watches now. We have the sensors, smart watches, smart goggles, smart everything, smart rings, smart garments, even, and how to make that more mobile, more contextual. I think that is the way that we're moving to. And then, of course, I think, of course, there's two continuums. First is the very advanced, very futuristic, and then we have the low, as was said just now, and the low income, but still, and Chris was saying, you have the low tech devices and the high tech devices. So, of course, I think technology bears a huge transformation in how we deliver teaching and learning in that. So maybe to sum up what I'm discussing is about, I think innovative pedagogy should, or we have to think about these three worlds, crossing into the physical, the technological investment in the physical worlds, in the digital worlds, and also in the biological worlds, and how to connect them, and then preparing for the audience, which is with futuristic, which is in the high bandwidth or high technological, and also with the students who have low technological capabilities. And then how do we escalate this to a global, not just a local community, but a global community, moving to experts outside. We have expert now, we can tune into what people are doing in America, in Europe, in Africa, and then how to make the learning more connected and more global. So that sums my sharing for now. Thank you. Back to you, Wrapup. Prof. Datuk.
Yeah, Dr. Sivalingam, we can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Helmi. Clearly, you have taken a very global view on how technology is advancing and how we can actually marry the various aspects to medical education. Perhaps later we will come down trying to look at some local approaches that has already been invoked and see how the digital transformation is taking place in our institutes itself. And maybe we can actually make proposals as to what are the opportunities we have and how we can actually move forwards in case there are barriers, and if you can identify such barriers. Clearly that's going to be important, and we would like to hear your experiences from UKM and how it affects the medical faculty and the health sciences especially. And that is going to be very helpful to all of us so that we can also share our views with regards to that. Let's listen to Chris and the views he has in regards to this digital transformation. Then we will hopefully have some discussions as we pose some questions as we go along. Thank you. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sivalingam. Good afternoon to Dr. Vaikuntan, Associate Prof. Dr. Helmi, and everyone who is attending today. So I'm Chris. I'm a postgraduate student in IMU. My project is working on Helicobacter pylori. It's a bacteria that causes stomach cancer. So since the pandemic, I think a lot of us were affected and the progress were delayed, and there are things that were inevitable. And partly this digital transformation has helped a lot of us tremendously. So other than school, the school has been providing us very active support. Like for example, there's some of the softwares that they were trying to bring into the cloud. Like for example, the SPSS, that is the statistical software that we can start for tabulating our data. So there are a lot of situations like this inevitable, that things have changed. Like for example, this pandemic, it changes how we actually work. And for research students like myself, we tend to use recordings, like we record down our research data on paper, and it was a very traditional thing until the pandemic that came in. So not many of the students were very good at using digital products, especially in data recording, where if there's concern of intellectual property, or if there is any other things that they were concerned about. So especially when the supervisors were not very fond of these products, if they don't know about this. So something that we don't know, we are probably more afraid of it, and we try not to use it until we get to know about it. So I think this is the part where it slows the adoption of digital products until the pandemic, and people start considering what we can do at home. For a lab-based person like myself, then we were trying to look into any of the aspects what we can do. Like myself, I could start writing a thesis, or we can start looking up reading some other materials while staying at home. So I do have to agree with Dr. Vaikuntham and also Associate Prof. Helmi, where they were talking about, firstly, Dr. Vaikuntham talked about the internet access and for the personalized learning, and Dr. Helmi were saying that all these engagements that we can do and all the smart devices, the world is transitioning with all the smart products around us. So with all these things that have been changing, medical education is also changing. So for my friends who were affected by the pandemic, they were telling me that, at first they were troubled with connection problems. So some lecturers, they might forget to, they might have some problems with the internet connection. Then it just takes a few glitches, and then it would tremendously affect the whole session of the lecture. So when you keep having broken lectures like this, and initially you will feel a bit of, you want to go back to the original where you, pre-pandemic times, where you can attend classes like normally, and then you don't have to go through all the slides. And there were a lot of complaints initially, but the school that helped us throughout the process, it makes things a lot more better right now. Currently, they're using the hybrid mode for what I've heard from my friends today. So a lot of them have already come back for classes, and then they can attend their practicals. And I think this is something that is going to stay for an endemic stage of COVID. So I think this is something that we have to adopt and adapt into this kind of a situation. Because, and some of them were actually raising questions, were doctors taught during the pandemic times actually qualified? So not to say that the doctors were not qualified during that were learning at this time, but saying that whether doctors were taught enough, where they were exposed enough to these techniques. So Dr. Vaikuntham were actually raising that maybe if they can record these sessions down, and then the doctor himself can actually look at them and then give critical comments and be like a more asynchronous, combined with asynchronous learning. This could be a very effective approach for times like this. So I think this is the school has been very incremental, has been very important in playing as a role to conduct education very differently, and everything has to change within 1 year. So this is a very, it's a very, I wouldn't say it's the most effective way of learning. I would prefer the hybrid mode of learning, where I can attend some workshops and lectures, while at the same time, I prefer some flexibility from learning from home. But this is something that is not a luxury for a lot of people, especially in the medical in the medical schools. So I think I will stop here, but thank you very much for everybody. And I would like to hear your thoughts.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Working in the lab and also listening to other colleagues. That's great. Maybe this is the time we can bring our speakers together and then highlight some issues as to how we can talk in driving digital transformation. That's the theme for the afternoon, particularly related to medical education. Now, traditionally, medical education going through a 5-year program is an arduous one. And we are so very familiar with the face-to-face apprenticeship model. That's what is happening. And at the same time, Dr. Vaikuntan brought up the concept of democratizing learning and also learners, right? And how blended learning is by far a better method than the face-to-face. Certainly there are issues related to both, whether face-to-face, blended, or totally online, and whether it is synchronous or asynchronous, as pointed out by Chris. And we have any discussion in your own experiences in the institutes that we are learning, how this is actually affected and whether this is the way to go. Blended learning, synchronous and asynchronous, as opposed to face-to-face, the conventional methods of learning. We have our discussion. Well, maybe we can start with Vaikuntan and then followed by the other two speakers.
Yes, thank you, Prof. I have some, firstly, like I said again, my disclaimer, I've got some radical views. I think we need to go back to the basics of how the doctor was educated from the time of Hippocrates. So it was beyond apprenticeship. It was in the Vedic philosophy called a Guru Dakshina sort of system, where it's a guru that you went to. He has to be a master, though. He must be master in his skills, on his craft. You went and you lived with him, you cooked for him, you washed his clothes and sat and saw what he did. And that was observational learning. This comes from Bandura's theory of learning. It's a very powerful tool. So I like history, though I hated it in school, but I had to go back and look at it because sometimes you are reinventing the wheel. So technology has provided us the enablement to go back to basics. So I'm very grateful for the pandemic, don't get me wrong, because what I tried to do for 20 years, trying to convince people to get onto the technological bandwagon, it took a small virus to do that overnight. So it's great. So everybody now knows how to use some form of technology. So that's one great thing. The second thing it has done is I used to enjoy traveling around the region to teach, for conduct workshops. Now I'm conducting workshops in my sarong, in my house, which is very convenient. My wife is happier that I don't travel around so much. And I'm not putting on that much weight because when you travel, you eat. And I can teach high-end skills, including micro-suturing remotely. Sure. So there is a methodology. I won't tell you how, the one you got to come and invite me again and I'll teach you. So it is doable. So medical education needs masters. So there are only 4 components to medical education. We need a patient, lots of patients. We need a student. So students we have. We need a teacher. And the other one we need is the nurse. The nurse, the allied health profession. And it's very important to understand the role of our colleagues in the clinical setting. Because there are certain things I would rather let my nurse teach them communication skills than I teach them. As a surgeon, I don't have very good communication skills. So I think once we have this in place, why do I need the university?
Sure.
First question, why do I need? I don't think I need a university. I really don't think I need a university for medical education. It is bloody expensive. I can't afford it. And it is self-selecting middle class, upper middle class people to do medicine. How many poor people end up doing medicine? Now, if I can do anatomy, physiology online, on demand, anyhow learning, anytime, I can work night shift in Starbucks as a manager, earn enough to keep my family going, at the same time learn the knowledge. And then you give me assessment anyhow, anytime, anywhere. I will do the assessment. If I pass, it doesn't have to be 1 year. I can do it maybe 2 years, the whole course. So that's one thing. So who's the faculty? The faculty is my clinicians who live in my community. I go to this great ONG guy, Dato Siva, I catch him, I buy him one teh tarik and tell him how do I examine a gravid uterus. And then he'll give me his tips and tricks. I'll give him his teh tarik and I go and see another fellow who's very good at something else, you know, doing carpal tunnel. And I say, how do you do it? So once we have this, and then you have this. So the other thing that has come out great is micro payments. Micro payments are excellent. So if I charge you $10 to attend my lecture, like 100 plus, I'm planning for my retirement with that, because nobody wants to employ me. Sooner or later, they're going to stop employing me. I've got all this material. I'm thinking of monetization. That means moral and ethical monetization, not Facebook monetization. For your information, 2 weeks ago, I canceled my Facebook account. I do not have alignment to the immoral activities of Facebook, and I think we all should. Anyway, I won't say too much.
Thank you.
So it is possible. Thank you. I won't say anymore.
So that's actually in line with many of us radically thinking that the medical education need not be the formal 5-year long drawn out sitting in lecture halls and taking up space. We're talking about virtual space and trying to radically reduce it to perhaps 3 years, and you can complete your medical school if you have this kind of a blended learning. Excellent. Prof. Helmi, how do you think you see the digital transformation in UKM, especially after the pandemic, and how medical education has been radically changing? Or have we gone back to the old face-to-face discussions? Maybe we want to hear from you.
Thank you, Prof. Siva. And yeah, of course, I agree with Dr. Quintin on the relevancy of online education, and I totally agree with inviting people to technology is the way to go. You have to use technology in your teaching and learning to make it happen. But definitely pandemic has increased. It has. We don't have to preach anymore. We always preach. Technology. You do this e-learning, and then I like to quote Professor Tuckman. So he's a psychologist. He always says these 4 phases of formation. So when you form something new, it's the first phase. And then the second phase is norming. Oh, how do I do this? How do I use Zoom? I've never used Zoom before. I've never used the LMS before. I've never done this. And then you gradually go to the phase of norming. And then, so storming, norming, oh, this is easy. Yeah, I know how to do this. And then finally, you go to the phase of performing, where you understand the ecosystem. I think the panelists here, you have understood the ecosystem, of course, to get that going. And of course, Dr. Vaikuntin was talking about, and Chris was also talking about synchronous and asynchronous. Of course, I think this is very important, and a good aspect of digital learning or mobile learning, I think, is the recording, because if you have slides, it's just slides, and then you'll be like, what did Dr. Siva talk about like 4 months ago? And then you're going towards the end of the semester, or you have completed 1 year. I don't remember, but it's the explanation from the experts. And then, I think that is the important part that we're missing when we go, with synchronous or what do you call it, face-to-face teaching. We have that, but the recordings are lost. But I'm pretty sure IMU has, video cameras all over the place, and then the recording. But I think that is important, and that is what is missing in face-to-face teaching. So what we're doing in UKM, and also the Council of Malaysian E-Learning Council, MIPTA, with Mr. Hasnain and team, is we're moving towards these recordings, these hybrid learning, these hybrid teaching, high flex, hybrid, and I think, of course, content is sequential. There's content for memorizing, and then as we move to the higher order thinking, we sort of probe students for critical thinking, and moving up the scale of higher order thinking. But I think, of course, starting from recordings and digitalization, digital first, and then moving up that scale of higher order thinking. Back to you. Yes.
At this point, can I add on from your own personal experiences? Do you see, or rather foresee, that if we were to actually be able to create or even curate good contents, that eventually we should be able to merge the medical schools so that you can actually optimize the personnel rather than each university having a separate set of faculty, and you have a common curriculum. And all I need is just tap on this, and I don't need, perhaps, I'm thinking about, the cutting down the length of education and because of content and the method of delivery. So if all these people can be pooled together, and as monetization has been thought about, would you not see that we are actually redundantly employing faculty rather than using their brains to create good contents?
Very interesting question. I think maybe now the ministry and all the universities are going for micro credentials, MOOCs, and stacking up of these micro credentialing. I think that's a way to go. Dr. Vaikuntin was talking about, he has these videos, you can put them up on a platform, make the business model, and stack them up to eventually go to a degree program. Definitely, I think of course it's the way to go, and crossing, sharing resources. I think of course is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to tap on Chris, who has also gone to, was it Poland and various other places in US, in Texas. If you look at education, in US, the K-12 series, and also in Hungary, where anybody and everybody can access the curriculum. It is a national curriculum, and you have all the contents online for them to access it. Maybe Chris has some views about how I'm talking about this approach, and any views you have with regard to the digital transformation that we can anticipate, that you're already involved in, and how we should move forward.
Thank you, Dato. Yes, back in US, I was in UT Austin for a short time. So they were using this platform called Canvas, very similar to Moodle. So there are a lot of things that we can do as, because I wasn't a full-time student, but I was allowed to access several and various courses that would help me at the time during in UT Austin. So this is something that I think it really helps me at that time, where all these quizzes and the modules that were introduced for me to help me to understand what the lectures will be all about. So that is just one part of it. And then the other side of it is the lectures were just, all these contents online, they were just mere quizzes. So it does help in a way for you to understand what is the thing about, but the subject is all about. But the thing is, you wouldn't understand deeply, like for example, what Prof. Helmi said earlier, where we need to understand more. If there is a more, we might forget, or we might even don't understand what are the deeper context of it unless we actually flip through the textbook. Like for example, if you wanted to understand all the mechanisms of, for example, a cell mitochondria, and then you need to know all the aspects of it. And I don't think that would be covered in simple quizzes in Canvas or in Moodle, just like that, unless you go through all that contents.
Okay. All right.
But it's something that helps, It can be coupled with other contents, can coupled with workshops and the lectures that we are going to have, then you will start to see the pictures in different dimensions.
Yeah, during the pandemic, almost 2 years, in IMU, we have had a huge amount of experiences, not only learning as we went along, but in trying to deliver the curriculum and trying to get students to engage at the same time, to be able to make it interesting enough that the engagement actually is productive. And I'm happy that you touched on the Moodle. IMU still uses Moodle, but I think quite importantly, the learning management system we use can be optimized and optimally utilized to run the entire program. And we have a huge amount of experience, and in the clinical school year, we did move quite a bit in the digital transformation, in trying to engage a rather formalized way in which students can actually access whatever we want. And during the process, we were able to transform the Moodle platform for clinical school. Apart from what you mentioned about quizzes, it's much more than that. We were able to, based on our task analysis, we have actually created for each of the disciplines a lesson plan, so that students know how the lesson plan reflects on the curriculum. And then we have also provided with them the appropriate resources apart from the method of delivery, which is largely online, but also a hybrid and a very little bit about face-to-face. And the important thing that we learned from here was that also to engage the library. So in providing resources, you want students not to navigate all over hunting for data and information that is not so relevant to their level of learning. So in order to pitch it, we provide the resources that is available in our digital library. So that makes it almost, describing the scope. And I'm trying to find out whether that was so with our two colleagues also, in trying to actually see the digital transformation taking form. And the 2 years that we have had, we can actually see that. We had a great amount of problem in trying to get the buy-in from faculty, because initially when you try to transform, there's a lot of work to do apart from also running the program simultaneously. So that was an issue. It is still ongoing, but you could see that we were improving. And the enormous amount of support provided by our e-learning resource and the IT, I think that was fantastic in trying to make it possible. This is our own personal experience. We're very happy that this transformation is real and it is possible even with Moodle. I know that some of the universities like NUS created a learning platform, a learning management system that was actually, fit for their use. And I think that is also possible if we have more and more expertise. As you know, there are a huge number of learning management systems that are available. Maybe we can get views from our two colleagues also on what I've said and what their views are in regards to digital transformation affecting the delivery of our curriculum. We also incorporated assessment tools, formative assessment tools, discussion panels. It's very active, but trying to get the students engaged in these discussions and getting faculty to be available, there are limitations, but we can work on it. Maybe we can get some views from our colleagues, like Kuntan and Elmi.
Yeah, so I think that's a key point that you hit. So in the hub of, if I owned an education institution, apart from my customer who's my paying students, my key component is my faculty. So one of the problems with the university is the preoccupation with research. Yeah, we need research. So I have a professor of surgery who gets a $6 million grant to do some surgical research and becomes a professor. And there is his senior lecturer who does all the teaching. And because he doesn't do that much research, doesn't get grant, he gets no credits. So this is the problem. So how do you link the teaching with the KPI of the individual. And I think, Prof, what you just said is so important. Why is the faculty resistant to produce a 10-minute video? To produce a 10-minute instructional video is probably going to take me between 30 to 40 active hours from designing, creating the resource, putting in all that. So why would I want to do that? In the 30 hours, I can probably write a simple case history or some 20 patients observational study and publish. So this is the issue. And I think if you're a faculty member, if you don't produce educational resources, then I think your career should be in jeopardy. It has to be that way, because unless they give you this, not so much the carrot, it must be the carrot and the stick. Both must be there. And I'm very strict about this. Though I have no power, I just work in a village hospital, so I'm not involved. I've attended exit exam meetings for the National University of Singapore, the high-stake exit exams, and some of the professors fail to turn up for the exam. They come in late because they're busy operating, earning revenue. To me, I take great offense to that when you're a professor. Professors, he teaches. Research and others are not important. Anyway, that's besides the point. So I think that's one important, very important component. We think we talked about national assessment. As you know, in the UK, as of 2023, there's no more university exams for medicine. It's the standard, national standard exams. So they've worked hard on it. They're coming out with that. And I think there's something that Malaysia or others need to do. Anybody can sit the exam because it's a competency-based examination. If you have the competency, whoever you are, you should be given a degree. And the competency needs to be authentic. Passing an MCQ doesn't make you a physician. But I want the 360 feedback. I want to know what the doctor in the village thought of you as you went there and did your posting. What did the nurse think of you? Because that's what you're going to do. The community is where you're going to practice. So there was an interesting study from Boston. They use carpenters and plumbers to assess cardiac surgeons' performance in surgery. They paid them $10 or something, asked them to watch the video. So as long as your rubrics are clear and descriptive, that's what OSCE is. I don't need to have a highly competent doctor to assess a OSCE. If the OSCEs are well written, anybody who can read English and see will be able to mark. So this is what they do. They found very good validity between non-surgeons who are lay people. They call it crowd assessment. And this is something that we can think about. And I always play a game because final exams are very boring. We sit there for 4 hours examining hundreds of students. So we do have some live patients. So I always engage the patient and I say, you give the mark and I give the mark, and then we compare. And 98% of the time, we give the same marks. I go through the marking scheme with them, though they are very hesitant because we are told we are not to mark. I say, I'm not going to put your mark. I just want to play this game because I'm bored. Again, I got attention deficit disorder. So crowd assessment is possible.
Thank you. We are running short of time. So maybe I just want a little comment from Prof. Helmi before I wind up. So Prof. Helmi, have you got anything to add on to our discussion with regard to digital transformation? Certainly there are many, many areas to touch on.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think still, of course, what resonated by all the panelists is, I think, the role of educators. How we have transformed from sage on the stage towards moderating. And then I think now it's the era of inspiring. How do we inspire learning? How do we inspire students to learn with us? How do we engage them? How do we, actually, before this in face-to-face, we could look at the student like, oh, okay, he sort of engaged with my teaching and learning, but now everybody's turning off the video. So how do I know my students are really engaged? It's sort of a dilemma here, but again, I'm using collaborative tools, online collaborative tools, engaging them, and as Dr. Vaikuntin was saying, how do we really, and crowd assessing them, I think these are the way forward in education. I think and empowering students to create content and sharing their real experiences, I think is the way to go, definitely. And I think we have to really rethink. Of course, we're moving again towards hybrid learning, and again stressing on global expertise. I've seen. I went to Melbourne before the pandemic, and they had a living lab. And then what they did was the camera was turned on 24/7. So I mean, when students came in, like, oh hi, we were doing this, and then discussing some sort of, I think the learning community is, we have to go global, and I think curating, creating new stuff has to come from there, and going to and making the global knowledge and making it contextual. I think that is important, because case studies in Malaysia, of course, is different from global case studies. So yeah, tweaking that to fit Malaysia, I think is also important.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I really have to wind up here. As you know, that we were just brainstorming quite a few issues over the period of time. But I think in Malaysia, we have to take into consideration this digital transformation and how it affects the numerous medical schools we have. Yeah, both public and private schools, and which is also utilizing a huge amount of manpower. But we have a common aim to produce that competent doctor and health professionals that we want. And we know that medical education itself is kind of coming down to a common approach, which we all share and agree. You know, technology is advancing very rapidly, and there are various ways in which you can optimally utilize this technology to help us learn. We want to make it possible, and rightfully said, mobile learning is going to make a huge amount of changes to the way we learn. Virtual space will probably will probably overtake physical space in our learning environment. And clearly, our digital learners are going to utilize this much more than our conventional learning. So with that, I want to conclude this session. Thank you very much to the three speakers, Dr. Vaikuntan, Chris Tan, and Prof. Helmi, for joining us. And I hope that we can discuss further in other forums on similar areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be in touch.
everybody.
Yeah, my village.
Thank you.